Hey everyone, and welcome to SkillCapped. My name is Dr. Zora, and in today's video we're going to be reviewing 3 major tips to rank up in Valorant. There have been a ton of guides created for Valorant since its release, ours included. All of them are meant to help you guys improve. However, it can be difficult for players to keep up with all the content when you're on a time crunch. Perhaps you're busy working full time or are a full-time student, so time is scarce to practice and improve. If this is the case, you've come to the right video. These are 3 insane tips that will take you to another level. If you were to only follow 3 tips to run away with, this is going to be it. If followed correctly, you'll notice drastic improvements in your gameplay just by consistently using these tips. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. These tips are going to be dense and detailed, so make sure you keep up. Going to our question of the day for y'all, what ranks have you been hovering at during the current act of Valorant? If you've played enough games, you'll eventually hit the rank that you deserve, but you'll still change by a rank or 2. However, we've noticed that some players will jump between a significant number of ranks. For example, we've heard players going from gold 3 one day to bronze 1 the next. These kinds of jumps can really tell how your play is, so make sure to drop that comment down below. With that being said, let's get right into our first major tip to rank up, and that is knowing general strategies in Valorant. This is the bread and butter of being able to play Valorant to the highest level. A lot of players mistake the game as just who can aim better, but you couldn't be more wrong. Having a solid strategy will always trump better aim. For example, a lot of people contribute the recent Sentinels win at VCT Masters to tenz. However, while he did showcase some impressive stats, it was really a team effort that got them the dub. This is drastically different than when tenz was on cloud 9, where it was basically him trying to get frags, and if he doesn't, the team loses. Strategic play will always beat better aim. Of course, you need some aim, but having strategy can make up the difference and then some. Speaking of strategy, if you want to learn the best strategies created by the pros that will get you up the rankings, then go to skillcapped.com to unlock our hyper improvement system that will teach you everything you need to blast through the rankings in Valorant. The link will be provided in the description below. So what are these general strategies that we're talking about? On the attack side, there are a few strategies that we could do. The first is the most simplest but also the most riskiest, and that is hard rushing. This is when your team throws all their abilities out and charges onto the site from one position, hoping to overwhelm the enemy with sheer numbers. The pros of doing this is that if your enemy doesn't stop the push, you can easily stomp your way in. The cons though is that this exact push is easily countered. With a simple use of abilities such as a slow orb, molotov, flash, or smoke, you'll end up significantly slowed down, making it easier for the defenders to get a few picks, while also giving more time for the other defenders to rotate. By the time you go for the push after your utility is done, you likely have lost a few members or are about to face a stacked site. We really recommend only hard rushing as a way to change the pace and catch defenders by surprise. Other than that, a lot of times, especially at the higher ranks, these pushes can be stopped quite easily. So what is the main strategy that we should do? The best push that you can do is what we call split pushing. What split pushing is exactly what it sounds like. Your team will split into 2 groups and take control of 2 separate choke points on the map that lead to the site. For example, on split, this would be heaven and garage. By doing a split push, the defenders have to divide their attention more, which leads to less players for each of your 2 groups to face. This is much better than just going through one choke point, where all the defenders nearby can simply turn their crosshairs over there, and you're going to be in a lot of trouble. To execute a split push though, the timing has to be perfect. Both sides need to go in at the same time, otherwise if one goes in too early, then the defenders can put all their attention over there and then kill everyone off before transitioning to the other choke point. Now that you know essentially the 2 ways to push through on attack, we need 2 strategies to make sure those pushes are successful. First is having a buddy system. What this is having 1 or 2 teammates with you at all times when you push. The benefit to this is that if an enemy was to show up and kill you, another teammate will be close by to get a kill or trade the frag back. By using the buddy system, you'll always ensure 3 scenarios. 1, you push together and kill the enemy. 2, you or your teammate gets killed, but you get the frag back in return to even the numbers. And 3 is when you played everything correctly, but the enemy still ends up killing both of you. If you do this correctly though, scenario 3 should rarely happen until the defenders have a similar setup themselves. To show you effective trade fragging, we're going to showcase this pistol round by Sentinels. Note that they are doing a split push through heaven and garage just like we talked about a minute ago, but also note that they have 2 players together at both of these positions. This way, these 2 players can work off one another and get the trade, having that buddy system that we talked about. Fnatic also had a similar setup which made the round very close, however Sentinels ended up using the buddy system better and trading more frags and therefore taking over the site. The last crucial strategy to get your way through not only the attack side, but also the defender side is baiting utility. We mentioned that a hard rush can be easily stopped by abilities, but if the defenders run out of abilities before you go for the push, then they'll have nothing to stop you besides their aim, and you'll have a much easier time of hitting the site. This is an area that we see a lot of lower ranked players miss, and if done properly, you'll notice that your site hits will be much more effective. The easiest way to bait the defender's utility is by making noise in certain choke points. When defenders hear this noise, they'll be more likely to use abilities as they think you might be going for the push. However, your purpose by doing this is exactly to just burn the abilities. Make sure to do this in a couple of areas to get rid of more abilities from multiple agents that are in different positions. You may need to expose yourself and get into some initial engagements to achieve this. However, it's important to not overcommit to this and only do enough to do a bit of chip damage and get those abilities out. A pick would be great, but it's not the goal of this drill. Now if you work on those general strategies, you're already well on your way to the higher rankings, but we need to take that next step further. We need to work on actually implementing those strategies and doing it well. The first thing to do is to try them out by communicating to your team what you want to do and then executing it. However, things aren't going to be perfect at the first attempt. Perhaps the timing was a little off on the push, or someone forgot to use a certain ability. In order to find these mistakes, the best thing to do is what we call VOD reviewing. VOD reviewing is when you record your own gameplay and then watch it back to observe certain areas of your play where you could improve on. To do this, you'll need some sort of recording software. If you have an NVIDIA or AMD graphics card, you can utilize the recording software that comes with it. On NVIDIA, the software is GeForce Experience, which has NVIDIA Shadow Play that you can use, and on AMD it's called Radeon Relive, which does the same thing. If you don't have these graphics cards or just prefer to use an external software, we recommend using OBS or Streamlabs OBS. They're both free programs that are easy to set up and use. Now that we have our footage recorded, the best way to VOD review is to look through rounds where you did particularly poor on. For example, in this clip here, I do a good job of smoking off the choke points to delay the push. However, I made a bad choice to push through the spawn smoke where I end up in front of 2 enemy players that absolutely obliterate me. You never really want to go through a smoke unless you know it's safe to do so. But when I look back at this clip, none of my teammates had any vision of the enemy, so I made a very bad move to try to go through the smoke without knowing what's past it. Now that you see the mistake, we need to figure out how we can improve for the next time that we face this scenario. One thing we could have done was wait until the smoke faded before going for the push. This would have prevented us from facing a surprising number of enemies and giving us the ability to get into more favorable engagements. The second option is to wait for teammates to gather information. If my teammate on site was able to hear them and make a distraction, then that would have been a good time for me to try to push out of the smoke and help him out, since the enemy can't focus their shots on both of us at once. To give another example, here is me trying to retake the A site on bind. I know that a player just planted the spike and is trying to reposition, so I go for the push here to catch her off guard. This was a good move, but what I followed up with afterwards was not. I ended up in the middle of the site where players could shoot me from multiple angles. As a result, you can see that I get pinched here and easily killed off. One way to improve this play is by simply backing up after I grab the initial kill. This would have prevented me from getting pinched, and I could have waited for my teammates to get closer to the site so we could work together to clear off those different areas. I could have also isolated into showers or ran back into U-Haul to put myself in positions where it's less likely that I get shot from multiple directions. These are just 2 examples, but the goal with VOD reviewing is to find mistakes and flaws in your play and then come up with ways that you can improve those areas to brush things up. Try these ideas out in the next game and see what works. Once you find out what works, you run with it and do that every single time. We also want to make a note that you should look for areas to improve on, but you should also identify areas that you did well on. You can fix all these different flaws that you have, but you want to make sure to fine tune those areas that you're doing well with and make them even better. You want to turn your weaknesses into strengths and keep your strengths, well, strengths. Speaking of weaknesses, the third major tip for you guys today is to practice your weaknesses. From the first 2 tips, you should have found a few areas that you need to work on. To give a few examples, perhaps you aren't implementing strategies well into your play. Maybe you're wasting too many abilities when you don't need to, or maybe you have areas of your aim that you need to work on. Once you have identified your weaknesses, we need to focus our practice on working on them. Say our crosshair placement is really bad, we're hitting too many body shots and therefore it's taking way too long to get our kills. To work on that, we need to focus all our attention on that in practice. In the range, we want to try to kill players by only hitting headshots. Make sure our crosshair is on the head before we fire a bullet, and if it's at the body, we need to stop for just a moment and take that extra millisecond to adjust before we shoot. Eventually this will become much more natural, and we can progress by going into deathmatch to practice the same idea. No shooting until we feel confident that we're at head level and then fire. This may feel awkward at first, but eventually it'll become more second nature and you'll already be at the head without thinking about it. Another area could be ability usage. Perhaps you just don't use your abilities enough when they could have helped you take a site, make a clutch play, or block a site take. This particular example will have to be done more in game, but now you have that conscious thought in your mind that you want to use abilities, and therefore you'll be seeking opportunities where you can use them when it's appropriate to do so. It'll take more effort at first, but as you get better at knowing what abilities you should use and when to use them, it'll become much more natural. These are again just a few examples, but really think about what areas of your play you need to work on and then focus your attention on that area so that you can get better. Again, the first few tips here can give you guidance on what those areas specifically are. Alright, if you haven't already, comment below on what ranks you've been hovering at during the current act of Valorant. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get more premium guides just like this one with one goal in mind: helping you become a better player. We here at SkillCapped want to thank you for watching. We'll catch you in the next. I'm Dr. Zora, and good luck out there.